name is Thomas Bona. I'm a partner at Pillinger Miller Tarallo, and I'd like to welcome you to Pillinger Miller Tarallo's podcast, Risk Matters. Risk Matters will examine thought-provoking insurance and risk management topics by interviewing leaders in the insurance industry. Our host today is Jeffrey D. Schulman. Jeff Schulman is the managing partner of Pillinger Miller Tarallo's upstate New York offices in Syracuse and Buffalo. He is highly experienced in construction, environmental, risk transfer, and transportation, as well as other areas. Our guest today is Nancy Kalinoglu. Nancy is the Director of Risk Management and Claims for City Underwriting Agency, specializing in labor law and construction. Prior to that, she was risk manager at Lend Lease, and before that, she was an assistant vice president at Aon. Jeff, let's dig in.
All right. Well, most of you don't know, but Nancy and I have known each other for many years. But I got to learn more about Nancy researching for the interview. And Nancy, I learned that you played soccer not only in high school, but you played at St. John's, which is fantastic. And I was curious what playing at that high level for a varsity team taught you about business and what lessons you learned that you took with you after you graduated.
Yes, so it was great to be part of a team while in college. Not only did it help me to make friendships that I've kept all my life, but it taught me to be a team player. And it also helped me become more involved in school, which not only was seen through my sportsmanship, but also academically. I spent a lot of time on campus, traveled with a great bunch of ladies, had a great coach. So it was a lot of fun, but it taught me, I'll tell you a big thing, which we didn't think of back then, but it taught me a lot about inclusion because it was a really mixed bunch of ladies. You know, we just had a great time together. It didn't matter your background or where you came from. And we supported each other, and it was a great experience.
It's interesting you mentioned inclusion. And one of my questions like down the line was asking you about being a woman in a kind of male dominated industry. As you know, insurance is, fairly male dominated, as most businesses are, and you came out pretty early on in your career to establish yourself. What challenges did you face as a woman entering kind of a man's world in the insurance business?
Well, I've been doing this for, as you said, many, many years. And right away, I knew that there were preconceived notions that a woman had to overcome. Back in the 50s and the 60s, there was that image. If you saw on a TV show an insurance agent or an insurance broker, what did you generally see? You saw a man sitting at his desk, probably his feet up, crossed, right? No papers in front of him, talking about insurance off the top of his head, negotiating claims, and not always being very honest in those negotiations. So the insurance industry as a whole had to kind of get past that image. And then being a woman, having to earn the trust and show my knowledge so that I was accepted by others in the industry. Some attorneys will, oh, this is a woman. This will be an easy case to resolve, to negotiate. She's not going to know what she's talking about. So myself and women at the time, we had to work harder. We had to make sure that we were more knowledgeable. We had to be a little more, I don't want to say forceful, but we had to be, more aggressive, because we needed to show that, not only could we do the job, but we can do it just as well, if not better, than a man. And so getting over this image and showing that we were educated women in the industry who really wanted to change the industry, be more forthright, be more honest, and go forward from there.
Mhm. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were a criminal justice major in college?
Correct.
So then how did you end up picking this? We all ended up somehow lucking into this industry, but how'd you get into insurance?
Okay, so no disrespect. I attended St. John's with the thought of becoming an attorney. Always wanted to be a lawyer. So St. John's didn't have a pre-law program. They directed me to criminal science, criminal justice. And I was the child of an immigrant. So I was told by my parents when I graduated high school, if you want to go to college, that's terrific, because just about nobody in our family had gone, but you have to pay yourself. And St. John's was not a D1 school for women's soccer, so there was no scholarship money, and there were no dorms. So, it was a commuter school. So between working and playing sports and whatnot at school, I had amassed some student loans, which when I think back of today, I mean, St. John's at the time was $3,200 a year. So, my student loans after 4 years were maybe $7,000 or $8,000 when I think about what these kids today.
Yeah, even in today's dollars, right? And it's amazing the debt that kids are mounting today because tuition's so much more. I don't even want to guess what St. John's costs, but it's probably about 20,000 or so now, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, at the time, though, you're making $5 an hour. So it, like I said, it was all relative with today's dollars. But so anyway, when I graduated St. John's, I said, you know what, let me work for a little bit, pay off some of my debt. And then I will take the LSATs and apply to law school. I went down to the career center and they said, well, there's claims adjusters positions that you might be interested in because of your education. I said, okay. So I applied for a few, and I actually was hired by Travelers and Prudential at the time, had a P&C program, and they started a week apart. Travelers started first. And I said, well, let me start with Travelers and see if I like it. And sure enough, by Thursday, I had called Prudential and said, sorry, but I've got another job and I'm staying where I am. And that's kind of how I fell into insurance.
And you never look back, right? Here you are.
Exactly. And back then, when you started with an insurance company, they actually invested in your training. I had 1 month of classroom training on everything from contract law and terms and conditions, which I'd had in school anyway, to how to determine liability, how to evaluate an injury, how to read a medical report. It was an intense 1 month that I was like, what did I get myself into? This is worse than, any class I took at college.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it was very specific, but it's good that they had that training, I think, because coming, when we all came out of school, we didn't really know anything, even though we thought we did. So to get that practical training and not just throw you to the wolves is probably a good thing. And did you have like early mentors where you still to this day have lessons that they taught you that you employ daily or in your work?
Yes and no. When I was done with the training and they put us out in different departments, I had what I like to call some dinosaurs in the business who I listened to what they said, watched how they behaved, and asked them questions. And that's kind of how I took on the role that I did and made it my own. Just really watching the people around me, and whether it was good or not, because then of course, after a few years at Travelers, I figured, well, I'm better than everybody else here. And I had to move. I want to get, do more and be more intense and get more training. And that's something that I've actually always followed. If I can be educated in any way, in any field, but especially in this industry, I've sat through law seminars, I've sat through claim seminars, I've sat through medical seminars, coverage seminars, anything that I could do to help me become more educated in this industry. I've always, even to this day, always taking my CE credits, and I take them, very seriously. I don't just look for an easy class to sit through, trying to learn something new, trying to learn how I can be a better insurance representative.
Yeah, and I think that's where we met on the conference circuit, where, you do take classes, and while there's some, of course, there's some social interaction, there is a lot of education available to people, and there's some very, interesting courses, for us who are in the business. And when you were at Travelers, you did a decent amount of coverage work, right? And were testifying as a witness, I believe. Do you have
Yes,
any funny
correct.
stories about lawyers that either at trial or depositions that were memorable?
Oh my goodness, yes. So back around 90, I think it was 96, Travelers had decided in a unique way to bring coverage in-house. And they hired an in-house coverage attorney. And they actually made a coverage department. There were a few of us in the department. And what we would do once a week, we would have a coverage conference on anybody who out on the floor in any claim. They can sign up, bring it in, and we would discuss the coverage. And so my role was, if there was a coverage issue, whether it was a reservation of rights or a full out disclaimer, that claim, that file would come to me, and I would be responsible for writing the letter and any follow up on that.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, there were a lot of pushbacks to the letter. And if the client, the insured, filed suit, I would be the claim representative that would represent at trial, depositions or trial, because I wrote the letter that was
Right.
at issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, one time I had an attorney who had read John Grisham's novel, and his first question was, "Isn't it true that you deny all claims before you, act on them?" I'm like, yeah, I think I read that book too and saw that in the movies. So I'm like, no, that's not what we do. We don't deny all claims first and then only accept the ones that get pushed back on.
Mm-hmm.
And another time I was at a framed issue hearing and the judge was asking me questions. Okay. He actually steps off the bench and comes down to the witness box where I was sitting, and he holds onto the side of the box and he's asking me questions, and he starts exercising. He's doing deep knee bends while I'm trying to answer his question. So I'm like, what is going on? And he's putting his hands up and doing all kinds of stretches. And I was like, oh, this is very bizarre, but I don't want to get on the wrong side of the judge. So, okay.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. I've
Yeah,
never seen
yeah.
that. And I've been in, hundreds of courtrooms over the years, and I've never seen something that crazy. That's
Oh,
pretty
it
funny.
was very funny. I was like, okay, whatever you want to do,
At
I'm
least
with it.
I assume he kept his robe on, so at least you had that.
Yes.
So after Travelers, I know you went to Aon on the broker side, and then went to Lend Lease, and I think some of that, when we talk about construction claims, when you and I deal with claims, it's often too late. The accident's already happened, or if it's a construction defect, the problem's already arisen. But I know that you also worked pretty heavily on the side of preventing incidents and preventing issues and problems. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I think particularly with regard to construction safety, I think that's such an important field when we talk about risk management, and especially with your experience at Lend Lease.
Yes. So that I was actually exposed to that starting at Aon, where I was in the claims department helping clients with claims. But because I was looking at loss runs and seeing their claims all the time, I would be able to note trends. And Aon had a loss control department. And I got to be very friendly with the people in the loss control department, because I would call them up and say, hey, listen, this client is having a tremendous amount of claims falling from a ladder, or it appears as though they're not wearing their harness and they're falling, at the site from a height, or whatever it might be. It might have even just been general housekeeping, a lot of trip and fall. So I kind of got familiar with some of the loss control services that they would go out there, they would do an inspection, they would talk with the owners, they would talk with the supers, they would talk to the employee, the workers on the site, what's going on. So when I was then hired at Lend Lease to work in their insurance department, again, because I was on the forefront of the claims coming in from around the country, if there was a particular project or a particular location that we saw a lot of trends going on, I would either go out with loss control, and now we would do the inspection together, and I would see how they would handle the employee and the super, and basically everybody on the site, because it's, safety is a team concept.
Mhm.
And it's also a culture. And at the time when I was at Lend Lease, we were trying to change the culture, and I think they were very good at it, to say to the employees, listen, we truly do want you to go home the way you came in. I mean, I know a lot of the workers hear that these days, but nobody wants to go home and say, oh my God, one of my employees lost a finger, they're in the hospital. Nobody wishes that on anyone. So we would stop work, we would call employees off a ladder and say, where's your harness? Where's somebody who's holding the ladder for you? There's no railings on the lift. You need to put the railings on. So they were very diligent in safety. They had a large safety department, a large loss control department, and it started to teach me on what to look for when I was out on a job site, or when I was investigating a claim, asking what really happened, what's going on, was this available, was this safety device available, why wasn't it being used, et cetera, et cetera. So it helped not only with the claims, but it helped to hopefully bring some awareness before a claim, so that even if we kept one person from getting injured, it was a great thing.
Right, and I think that's a really great thing to instill that in the culture of the organization, and let the people that are on the ground know that you really do care about safety as a company, and that's our culture. Have you seen some trends in technology on these larger construction sites as it affects safety?
Oh yeah, especially these days. A lot of the contractors are getting the 360 cameras, and they'll do a 360 picture of the job site before they leave,
Mhm.
so that you know what it looks like in case anything happens overnight. They'll do it in the morning when they first come in. There's cameras now. Not a lot of contractors are using them at this point, but there are cameras that you can have installed on hard hats or on vests, kind of like police officers, so you can see what's going on. Unfortunately, the worker feels like this is keeping a tab on them, or keeping a
Mhm.
tab on their friend.
Right.
But it's not. It's a tool for a near miss event. Maybe something happens, nobody gets injured, but you can learn from that event, and you can see it on a camera. It's not to tell on someone. Another tool that a lot of contractors are starting to use on the cell phone. If you're a worker and you see something that's not safe, you can actually text your super and let the super come and take care of it. So that this way you're not really telling on the person, but yet, you're aware, making someone aware of the fact that there's a potential unsafe condition that can lead to an injury on a site.
Is that
Um,
anonymous, or no, they know where it's coming from, but
it can be anonymous, or it can be discoverable, that, they'll know who it's from, because some
Mhm.
companies do actually reward if you report so many incidents. That to show that you're aware of your surroundings while you're walking around at your job site, and
Mhm.
taking care of people.
Yeah, I think, we've heard about the potential trend in body cams and or more cameras, depending on what stage of construction, but let's say before the, mechanicals go in and the steel's up and they have cameras posted. As an attorney who handles the claims, I can only see that being favorable, in that if it's going to capture an incident, we know what happened and we can address the claim appropriately. before an incident happens, we review the camera and we can see how our workers did that day. And I can understand the worker pushback that you mentioned, but at least if you're talking about culture, right? And you've instilled this culture of, look, we really want to take care of you. That's what this is for. It's not big brother, making sure you're getting the most out of your, 8 hours on the job. I think that it would be great if we saw more of that. And I've seen, cameras, on tavern cases, dram shop cases. I've seen them in a lot of restaurants, but I don't see them as much in the construction industry, and I hope we do.
Yeah, you're going to start seeing them, especially on ground up construction. Unfortunately, street and road, they really can't use that. Though I know Chris Dickerson from the city would love to somehow be able to surveil every milling project that's going on. But I think you're going to see a lot more of that, like I said, on the ground up construction and interior fit out construction. And again, it's really to keep people safe. I'd like to liken it to the telematics on a vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So with a lot of our fleets, I always recommend getting the telematics. Now you have the option of having a camera facing in the cab as well as outside of the cab. Most people go with just the outside of the cab. And I tell them, what, even if it shows that your driver is at fault, at least then we can learn from what happened. And from the insurance standpoint, we can have the carrier resolve the claim more quickly. It's not something that's going to be litigated for years.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, if it shows that you're not at fault, it's a great defense tool.
That's right.
And even the interior cameras, they really are a learning tool, because you'll see where a driver is being distracted, and it doesn't mean he's doing it on purpose. He's not purposely on his phone, but maybe he's eating a French fry. Maybe
Right.
something on the side of the road caught his eye.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that someone's going to punish an employee for. It happens,
Right.
or, you're falling asleep because you've had too many hours on the road, or conversely, didn't get a good night's sleep the night before. So you might have only been on the road for an hour, but you're starting to fall asleep. And if someone's monitoring that camera and they see that, hey, Joe is not paying attention, there's something going on here, they can call him in or tell him to pull over. It's all in the way it's being used. Most of the clients that we have and most of the contractors that I've seen are not using it as a punishment.
Yeah, and I've seen, we do a fair amount of transportation defense, and we see dash cams almost everywhere now. And we do see them, both facing out, which usually captures the accident, and then we see them facing in. And more often than not, it's actually become a good defense tool. Then, it's confirmed liability. I mean, a liability case generally, especially as something relatively simple as an auto accident with, trucking, you can usually tell who's at fault. And there may be varying degrees of liability, right? But so the camera, I think the cameras have only helped us to defend the cases. And then, yeah, on the ones that are really bad, you want to resolve those anyway. I think they're excellent. I mean, I wish we saw them more, and I am looking forward to seeing those more, because we do so much labor law, and I would love to see what happened and how the site is set up, and safety devices that may or may not have been available. I mean, that's so important. We know, obviously, in New York, we've done a lot of labor law. We've done a lot together. One of the trickiest parts of litigating claims in New York is labor law 240, right? And for those of you who are listening who don't know labor law 240, it's basically the gravity-related statute that protects employees who are involved in a gravity-related accident. And if they're not provided adequate safety devices, a contractor or an owner can be statutorily liable. And there's no comparative fault, which is what makes it so potentially punitive, really, against an owner and general contractor. We've always talked about internally at the firm and with contractors and insurance clients that we would like see some revision in the law that would account for some potential comparative on the part of the worker. And, we know that the plaintiffs bar in New York has done a fantastic job of lobbying the statute, right, and making sure that it sticks. Why do you think it is that you're on the board of the Long Island Contractors Association, right?
It's Long Island Claims
Long
Association.
Island Claims Association.
Correct.
Okay, so, that's one group that could be involved in helping to lobby Albany, right, to change that law, and not to eradicate the law. I think we've all see the value in protecting workers, but to make it more sensible. Why do you think it hasn't been, we haven't been able to mobilize that at all as a defense kind of, both in the contracting and insurance world?
So that's an interesting question, because I know the attorneys that I speak with who have taken part of the Albany labor law days, where they go up to Albany and try and talk with representatives in order to have this amended. I think that they're starting to get discouraged. I know I've heard in the past that you'll have busloads of defense people go to Albany, and they can't even get an appointment to meet with someone, or they're meeting with the secretary of a secretary of somebody else who's going to take notes. And the politicians, and just like judges, they want to believe in their hearts that they're there to protect people. Okay. Plus they get voted in. And what a better way, to say that I'm protecting you by not changing the labor law. So it's really having to break that. I don't know if it's a mentality, that if you keep it on the books, eventually you're going to put people out of jobs. So many small contractors who are safe or were safe had to close shop because they couldn't afford the insurance in New York. And if you look around the country, New York is the only state that has a labor law on the books. And the cost of insurance, because of the labor law, has quadrupled the cost of projects to be completed in New York. And that really affects all of us, because it's your tax dollars that are paying for federally funded and state funded projects that are paying quadruple the cost of insurance, because the politician won't change the law because they think they're protecting someone. And as you said earlier, it's not that the defense bar wants to eradicate the law. They want it to be amended so that if an employee is at fault for his accident, either whole or in part, that a jury can take that into consideration. But the way it is currently on the books, you could have an employee who is the competent person in erecting a scaffold or a lift of some sort, chooses not to do it properly and not to do the inspection properly, gets up on the scaffold or the lift and falls. And he won't be held responsible at all. Under one or two defenses, but
No, but
more,
as a general proposition, that's correct, right? And
correct. So that is in turn then causing his employer to have to pay more on a claim than his fair share, and that is going to drive up the insurance costs. And let's face it, insurance companies are in the business to make money.
Mhm.
So, if in New York, your average labor law claim is settling for 2.4 million, is that what they're saying now? It used to be 1.7. Now I know they're saying it's starting to pierce the excess layers over the 2 million. So about $2.4 million. They're either not going to write, the insurance companies are not going to write insurance in New York, or you're going to pay a lot of money. But again, people don't realize how it affects them, everybody in the state, because of the cost of insurance to do these other projects, such as the Tappan Zee Bridge.
No, well, absolutely. I think that was the second fixed cost, right, of the entire job was insurance as it relates to that project, which is really crazy. And it's in large part because of Labor Law 240 and that statute having no provision for comparative fault. And you hit it on the head. We're the only state in the country that has this law that all other 49 states, who I think do a fine job protecting their workers, right? And they certainly provide recourse for injured workers to obtain recovery. And that's not what we're saying, that they shouldn't obtain recovery where a contractor is at fault. But I have seen, I'm upstate New York and in Syracuse and Buffalo, and we've seen dozens and dozens of family-owned contracting business, ironworking businesses, and steam fitters and electricians, and they go out of business because they can't afford to keep up with some of the larger contractors who can absorb the cost of insurance, or in turn, as you know, pass the risk on to the subcontractors through contracts. So it's really a major problem in New York that I'm always just completely vexed by the fact that this can't get any legs in the Assembly or the state Senate. I talked to a state senator not too long ago, and he more or less laughed and said, good luck, trying to, get it amended. And so it's certainly here to stay for as long as, at least as I can see. And we've seen a little bit of trends in the case law, interpreting it a little more narrowly, but that's, a subject for another day, I suppose. I wanted to, of course, ask you about your position with City Underwriting. I don't know too much about it, and I wanted you to share that with us if you could, and what you're doing now.
Sure. So City Underwriting is an Acrisure company. Acrisure, I think, is now the 4th largest broker in the country, and it's actually maybe the 6th largest worldwide. And we are a conglomerate of smaller brokers who each offer different services, and we rely upon each other to help out with offering those services to our clients collectively. So what I do, I supervise a claim staff of 4 people and provide loss control services. What is unique about what we do here at City Underwriting is that I get to see every claim that comes in. And I again, can start noting trends for clients. Is there an issue with repeated accidents, why they're happening? And I can get in front of it, and I can get out to that client and say, listen, in the last 5 months, you've had this kind of a loss. What's going on? Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a culture, sometimes it's just not investing in safety. So what I really love about the position is being able to educate on the safety side to try and prevent those accidents and the losses. I go out to the job sites, I put on my work boots and my hard hat and my vest, and I'll go out there and take a look around, and I'll talk to the folks out there and see what's going on, or why are things happening. If it's a contractor who is having issues with A-frame ladders, I tell them throw them away and get platform ladders. If you need a ladder because you can't use a lift, or you can't use a scaffold, you can't use a Baker scaffold, then use at a minimum a platform ladder. Platform ladders now have become, lighter and more easier to travel. So they're safer. And a lot of the clients have started doing that. And then all of a sudden you'll see that there's less falls from ladders. I'll tell you quite honestly, I don't know how a contractor, especially a super or a foreman, can do it out there today, because not only do they have to be aware of all the OSHA regulations, which, I go out and I help them with that as well. So they're trying to follow the OSHA regulations. Now they also have to know the labor law, which is different from OSHA. Right. They think it's the same, but there's different requirements, different statutes. And whereas OSHA may say, okay, you don't need fall protection unless you're working over 6 feet. Well, we know on the labor law side, if you fall a foot and break your ankle, now you're subject to the labor law. And the foreman's like, well, but what do you mean? what was wrong with using the method that I used, or why did he need a safety device? And it's like, because the labor law is different from OSHA, and you need to kind of look at all of it and know all of it. And when you show these project foremen that, all right, so you got a project that was $10 million income to the company, but now you had 3 claims, maybe you have a deductible, and you even if the deductible is only a $50,000 deductible, and you subtract what you had to pay out of pocket for your deductible, and now also because of those claims, the insurance premium goes up. Now all of a sudden that $3 million profit to the company is gone. So in this position that I'm at here, loss control and claims, I get to see it all. I'm involved in all of it, and I try and help the client be aware of all of it, and make it like a program. You need to, they work together. They work together, and you need to get a hold of all of it, educate on all fronts.
In addition to the site safety visits and, working on improving site safety, do you also get involved in claims investigation, a reported claim or, emergency response, that kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. So sometimes when an accident happens at a site, I'm the first person that the insured will call to report it. So if it's a severe matter, if it's a serious matter, I'll get an investigator out right away. Tell the client, don't let anybody leave. I don't care if they say they saw it or not, because a negative statement is just as good as an eyewitness statement, because we all know, and I hate to say it, but 3 weeks down the line, if somebody has an attorney, all of a sudden their friend witnessed the accident when he was really, back in his car doing something else. So I do get involved in the claim investigations, assignment to claim investigators if the carrier allows. What I try and do with our clients is, again, putting together a program so that right from the beginning, the carrier knows this is who the investigative company is going to be if it's on their approved list. This is who the attorney is going to be if it's on the approved list. So I can notify the carrier and notify the attorney and notify the investigator right away, because a lot of times when you report it to a carrier, even if it's a serious matter, you have to have it escalated, and it could still take up to 24 hours to be assigned, and no one's going to look at it until then. So I try and get that all on the books before, when we bring a client on board, we make this program together on who we're going to call and how it's going to play out.
Yeah, we have an emergency response team too for construction accidents, and it's so important. We just lectured last week for an insurance carrier, and we spent, I think it was an hour lecture, we probably spent half of it discussing how important early investigation is, because you really need to, you said, I couldn't say it better. I mean, you need to not only lock up witnesses, but you need to lock up people who were not witnesses, to prove a negative, which is very difficult to prove later on. And we all know plaintiffs' attorneys are going to send an investigator to the site once their client signed up, and, to learn about it after the fact, and when it's too late, when we get the file, and, plaintiffs done their investigation. And if the contractor or the owner or the developer has not, if they don't have someone like you, they're going to be behind the 8 ball, because somebody else is going to have done the investigation and locked everything up.
Right. We always tell the client, just report it to your broker, and have a discussion with your broker on if it's something that needs to be reported to the carrier. Don't wait until you get served with the summons and complaint. If it happens, and it's especially if it's your own employee, but even if it's on your project, whatever it might be, call your broker, have that discussion, and listen to their guidance on whether or not it's something that should be reported, if it's something that's a notice only. It's an education to the client. A lot of times I have to tell them, listen, I know you're saying it has nothing to do with you, but in 3 years, someone's not going to remember that. So let's report it. Let's have an investigation, and then we can close the file down until if something develops. But I'll tell you a funny story when you said that, the plaintiff attorney is already starting to build their case. So when I was at Lend Lease, one of our first notice one time was actually from a plaintiff firm because we had a ground up construction, and he had somebody sitting on the rooftop of the building across the way, just watching the job site to see if anything was going to happen. And sure enough, an accident happened, and his employee had videoed the whole thing. And that was our first notice, within 20 minutes of the accident happening.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
We
I mean,
could talk offline who that is, but I probably won't be surprised at that either.
yes, I mean, in this industry, that happens all the time. They're just waiting right outside of large projects to see, oh, did anybody get hurt today? Here's my card.
Yep.
Ambulance shows up. Which hospital are you going to? Let me follow it.
Oh, yeah, so true. So shifting gears, I wanted to give you an opportunity to discuss the charity that you helped start called Alexander's Angels. And I want you to tell everyone a little bit about that and what you do for the charity and what maybe people can do if they're interested.
Okay, yes. So Alexander's Angels was created to bring awareness and money for research for Down syndrome. It's actually pretty personal because my sister's nephew was born with Down syndrome. And the family and his grandparents especially wanted to know, well, what's the next steps? What do we do? What do the parents do? What does the family need to do? And there was limited resources for them to go to. And they had to go to separate resources. There was nothing centralized. Let's say like with multiple sclerosis, you have the Multiple Sclerosis Society, and you can give them a call and they can refer you out to different agencies if need be. But there wasn't something like that for Down syndrome, especially in the New York area. So my sister's mother-in-law started Alexander's Angels because Alexander was her grandson who was born with Down syndrome. And, she wanted to help bring relief to other families who were going through the same thing. And when she started this foundation, she had found out that there were no major fundraisers in New York, especially on Long Island, for Down syndrome research and support. So she brought the Buddy Walk, which is a national fundraiser, to Long Island. And that's what we have that every year. In fact, the 16th year is coming up. I don't know if you can see my little brochure here.
Yeah, and we can talk to Joe about putting something up maybe in post-production so they can see, anybody who's watching can see that better.
Yes. So that's our largest fundraiser every year. And myself, my family, Alexander's family, we started off with maybe a few hundred people coming to this walk, and we had collected donations and did registration and the t-shirts, and then that kind of snowballed into more people wanting to get involved, donations of food and entertainment. So today it's a full day. There are just so many wonderful people out there who contribute for, baskets and raffles and food and entertainment. And this year it's at Sunken Meadow Park. And the money that is raised, 100% of the money does go to research and awareness for Down syndrome. And we incorporate as many Down syndrome people as possible, people affected with Down syndrome. It's just such a loving, fun day. But we do it all year long. We're not doing big fundraisers all day long, but to bring awareness to Down syndrome, there are little things that go on. There's a Down syndrome awareness day at the one of the malls. It's the name is out of my head right now, but they'll have people come in to do artwork or walk around the mall and talk to people just to educate them. They'll have a band set up and do all kinds of dancing and music. We also sponsor a Down syndrome art show where all the art has been done by those with Down syndrome, and that's a great event as well. There's really a lot of different ways to get involved. The most important thing, though, is that also this website, Alexander's Angels, has resources all in one place for people who may need assistance, who want to know what's going on. There's obviously different degrees, and certain people need different resources, and it's been
Right.
centralized so that parents can look through it and see exactly what they need.
Mhm. So is it alexanderangels.com? Is that the website?
It is, let's see, I don't know if they, yes, alexandersangels.org.
.org. Okay, alexanderangels.org. Excellent.
Correct.
Excellent. Well, that's fantastic work. It sounds like an amazing charity. Amazing. So good for you. And it sounds like you're doing God's work, which is fantastic. So I like to end the interview with what I call the lightning round. And I'm just going to ask you to say the first thing that pops up into your head as I go through these questions. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. New construction or renovation?
Accidents.
And choose one or the other for the next ones, okay? Email or telephone?
Email.
Fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
The Beatles or the Rolling Stones?
Beatles.
The Wizard of Oz or Wicked?
Oh, that's a tough one. Wizard of Oz.
Running or cycling?
Again, another tough one, but I'll go with cycling.
And I know offline you told me you're no longer running. You know, I can't run because of my knees or hips, and I like to bike also. So, appetizers or desserts?
Desserts. Sweet tooth.
Okay, good to know. And coaching or playing?
Coaching.
Coaching is great. I went through all
Yes.
that with the kids too, so it was fun. And that's all I have today. And I want to thank you, Nancy, so much for being a part of this. It's been great, and I've really actually learned so much. And it's a pleasure to see you as always. Hopefully I'll see you in person soon. And I thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Of course.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks for being part of our Risk Matters podcast. A great and very, very enlightening interview. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Tom.